Alabama gets ready for the start of what could be a gauntlet as they practice for the A-Day scrimmage. Okay, I'm just kidding. Look, it's spring practice, and we're getting closer and closer to figuring out who the next quarterback's going to be. And we all kind of feel like it's Ty Simpson's job to lose. We're going to talk about that. Bama on the offensive line, disappointing last year. What's it going to look like this year? What freshmen are standing out? We're going to get into all that right here on Cover Crimson. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, and thank you guys for being here. We're brought to you by, as always, mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Crimson, and we appreciate you being here. All right, that's how we get things started. And here's a roll. All right, Clint Lamb and Mick Gillispie. Clint, I have had a gauntlet myself today, but for the people, I'll do whatever it takes to bring them a quality show.
We're all mad at Starbucks right now for not having halfway decent Wi-Fi. You're at a random hotel, but you know what? You're making it work, man. Okay, so you didn't protest Starbucks enough to not get yourself a coffee.
They told me they were so nice. They told me they have internet, and then I'm like, okay, they don't have internet. They don't have it. I'm at Wind Creek Casino Starbucks because I got a flat tire on the way home today from our meeting yesterday, and so that's how the show starts. So guys, give us a thumbs up just because I'm hanging out with you, and hopefully my phone internet holds up. What does Ty Simpson need to do to be successful, Clint?
Well, I did want to bring up something that I thought was pretty interesting, a comment that Greg McElroy made, I think it was maybe yesterday on his show, ESPN. We'll go ahead and add that. And he was talking about Ty Simpson in particular, and I'll go ahead and read it for the podcast audience. So he said, one thing that I've been really interested in with Ty Simpson is how he develops as a leader. Ty Simpson, I was told by the staff 2 years ago that he was the best quarterback on the roster. The problem is that at that point, there were some things that he needed to be ironed out with his own confidence, what he could get away with, what he can do at this level, what he can't do at this level. So the reason that I thought that was such an interesting take from Greg McElroy is that is precisely what we heard back then, which was that the best quarterback on the roster was Ty Simpson. His issue, and this is why anytime I brought up like Nick Saban making the cake in the oven comments and stuff, he was talking about Ty Simpson. The main issue that he had is being able to kind of overcome mistakes. Like he would kind of let things snowball a little bit. That's, that's not anything you ever want to hear about a quarterback. I'm being real with you. I think he's made strides on that front. From everything that we've heard, he's made a lot of strides, and he made a lot of strides over the course of that season. But last year on the Keelon DeBoer stuff, I really think, the way that they work with quarterbacks, the confidence really started to get built up a little bit. He started understanding, okay, the mistakes are going to happen. You got to move on, move past it. But that was the biggest issue with him. There was a step up in competition based off of what he did in the state of Tennessee in high school and the competition that he faced, jumping all the way to Alabama. But, this is a guy who has all the tools in the world. He has continued to sit back and grow and develop and learn for 3 years now. And so a lot of people, they'll question, okay, well, why didn't he step in for Jalen Milroe when he was injured? We've addressed that, or excuse me, when he was struggling. We've addressed that 100 times. There's a lot more nuance to it than that. But this coaching staff really believes in Ty Simpson. We've already heard Ryan Grubb bring it up. We'll get to what Ty Simpson's going to need from everybody else, but what Ty Simpson needs from Ty Simpson is just to continue to grow and learn and understand. It's all about playing the next play, erasing what just happened, good and bad. If you go out there and throw an 80-yard touchdown, that means nothing when you step out on the field for that next drive. If you go out there and you throw a pick six, it means absolutely. It changes the scoreboard, don't get me wrong, but as far as your job and focusing on the little things, focusing on the next play, that's something that Ty Simpson needed to grow on. And from everything that we've heard, he's been doing just that.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm with you. I've heard that too. And then also the speed of the game was something that took him a little bit of time to kind of figure out. But then you started hearing last year during practice that part of his game was turning around. And so I'm excited about seeing what he can do out on the field. And it's interesting to hear Greg McElroy talk about that because, look, that was something that, he had to deal with being a backup quarterback for a little while. And then obviously the starter. And then when you're the starter, everybody wants to talk about the backup, like there's always somebody better unless you're Bryce Young.
Well, one of the things I remember, Ty had a pretty good scrimmage last spring, and we were talking to somebody in the program in the know, and we had said, hey, we heard that Ty probably looked like the best quarterback during Saturday's scrimmage. Their response was, Ty's been the best quarterback all spring. Yeah. And I remember that kind of my ears immediately perked up because that wasn't the first time that we had heard that. Like back when a lot of people were predicting Ty Simpson to win the job. A lot of times, guys, this isn't just people making stuff up. Sometimes it's you watching film and you kind of trying to make an educated guess or whatever. A lot of times you're talking to people within the program and they're kind of giving you, subtle statements like that don't exactly tell you, okay, Ty is positioning himself to leapfrog Jalen Milroe for the starting job. But you hear that and you say, okay, that's interesting. A, why would you say that? I mean, probably because it's true, but B, like, what does that mean as far as applying that to the 2024 season? Right. It ended up not meaning a whole lot. I mean, Ty Simpson barely played, but that was the belief of a lot of people in that room. Jalen Milroe had the locker room. He had, the experience. And Ty Simpson, from a consistency standpoint, he was still needing to grow as far as moving past some of that stuff, the making the mistakes and lingering on it and all that. I do think that Alabama's in pretty good shape with his quarterback room. The quarterback battle continues. This does not mean that Ty Simpson's going to be Alabama's starting quarterback in 2025, but I did want to share that information because, it's something that you hear from people that you trust. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the quarterback battle a couple of years ago, and then, of course, some people were wanting Ty to step up and take the job from Milroe last year. That created more drama and controversy. So it's like, I mean, do you go put this sort of thing out there and create a lot of problems? You're not trying to. That's not our goal here. But, it is something that was very real and taking place, and I think that kind of speaks volumes for Ty Simpson.
Yeah, here's a great comment. Thanks, Brandon. And the $5 for the shot's worth it. I'll take the shot for $5. To judge Ty Simpson for not starting last year is like judging Mick the Great without a hat. Okay, here's without a hat right here. This is without a hat.
Well, hold up now. Hold up. No. I just want from our perspective, you started breaking up there, and it skipped the part where you didn't have your hat on. I'm not kidding.
Mike Johnson's calling me right now. Mike, the great Mike Johnson, but I'm not answering. I'll call him when I get out of here. There you go. Without a hat. Without a hat.
That's a good set of hair there.
It is. Look, it's always been, whether you like it or not, I've always had a very full face. So. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I was surprised that going back to last year's quarterback battle, I was surprised Ty didn't win the job, or 2 years ago. And the reason is I knew that Ty had his dad's a coach. He's I think he's going to be a much better thrower of the football than Milroe. I'm not saying a better quarterback. I'm just saying and I hope he's a better quarterback because I want to win a championship. But the mid-range passes, some of the touch and finesse. Milroe threw a beautiful deep ball, but it took him so long sometimes to go through progressions. But then I kept hearing that Milroe was basically outworking Ty before they even got on the field. I'm going to be the first guy in the facility. I'm going to follow Bryce Young around and figure out exactly what he's doing. So I think there were a lot of things that kind of went into that decision for Milroe to be the starting quarterback. And I think it started with just Milroe had kind of had a better game plan and work ethic early on what he had to do to get the job. And I'm sure that Ty learned from that.
I'm going to say something. And when people hear it, their first thought is probably going to be you're out of your mind. But I want you to follow the logic that I'm using here. I actually think Ty Simpson will be a better dual threat quarterback than Jalen Milroe. Now, I didn't say he was going to be a better running quarterback than Jalen Milroe. He's not. There are very few quarterbacks in college football, or really the NFL for that matter, who have the rushing ability of a Jalen Milroe. But what I mean is we throw around the word dual threat a lot, but a dual threat quarterback is not a running quarterback. A dual threat quarterback is a threat with both his arm and his legs. And Milroe, in certain games against Georgia, he was the true definition of a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
He was taking advantage of the short to intermediate stuff. The deep ball was there. The rushing ability was there. That is exactly what you're talking about when you reference a dual threat player. He was taking advantage. He was letting Georgia pick its own poison. And when Jalen Milroe was playing like that, easily one of the best quarterbacks in the country, easily a first-round draft pick to the NFL. The problem was consistency. But with Ty Simpson, a lot of people, they say, or they don't think that he's as good of a rushing threat as he actually is. But not only do I think he brings that element, not to the extent that Jalen Milroe did, but he brings that element. I think he's going to be able to do the other side of it where he's got a good deep ball too. Probably not Milroe when Milroe's on. He doesn't have the arm strength of Milroe, but he's got a solid arm. He can make all the throws. But it's his ability to consistently be a threat with his arm that you have to take into account if you're a defense that is going to allow him and Alabama, in my opinion, to have a lot more success consistently in 2025 should he be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, right. And the Moon, who loves to take shots at my hair, thanks, buddy. Milroe was consistently inconsistent. I mean, and I feel like that really played out at the end of last year when he needed to kind of be. I remember Bryce Young at the end of his time at Alabama. It was like this, like stock. Like you could tell, like he had done everything he was going to do in college. I would have loved for him to come back selfishly, but you knew if you were being real for Milroe in his development, I would think another year probably would have been better for him. I don't know that it would have been better for Alabama, but it would have been better for him because it felt like he kind of was like the Georgia game was like up here. And then from that point on, it just felt like it was like kind of a slant down. But you know what? We get to worry about Ty Simpson and Austin Mack and then Keelon Russell. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's a whole new ball game now. And I know everybody's kind of sick about talking about Milroe.
Well, you know, here's why things could have been more difficult for Milroe should he return to college football. Like, I understand the dilemma. You know, when he went from year one to year two, he won a certain way in year one. There was very limited tape on him. You had the Texas A&M game, but I think, you know, he was kind of deer in headlights in that game. I just don't think that was very reflective, or maybe it ended up being a little more reflective than probably I care to admit. But, you know, I feel like that he was going to win a certain way in year one as a quarterback. And this is something I always talk about. Anytime you have a returning starter, especially a guy who was a first-year starter, he's put stuff on tape that now defenses have had an entire offseason to kind of analyze and study and figure out how they want to attack it, what he does do well, what he doesn't do well. And so if you're going to be effective in year two as a starter, you've got to evolve. You've got to have some counter punches. You've got to grow in some areas where maybe defenses aren't expecting, where when they start throwing some things at you, you completely exploit it. And Jalen Milroe did that to an extent. And that was especially true against Georgia. I've mentioned it before. Kirby Smart at halftime, they interview him, and he's like, hey, this cat's doing some things that we haven't seen him do. We didn't know he didn't say that we didn't know he was capable of doing, but that's essentially what he was saying.
Right.
From that point forward, you really didn't see. I thought, okay, this is the launching point. That's where I really started to buy into the whole Heisman thing, potential number one overall pick, like because he was making that growth. Yeah. But then from that point forward, you really didn't see it. But now, if he would have returned for another year, you say, okay, you would have had a chance to develop, but he was consistently inconsistent, which is that's exactly what the Moon said. And they're 100% right. And so if you give teams or defenses another offseason to prepare for kind of what you were getting better at, what you weren't getting better at, it's like it would have been that much more difficult for Milroe in year three as the starter. I'm not saying that doesn't benefit you to have multiple years if you end up being a 3-year starter, I mean, that's certainly going to benefit you from an NFL perspective, but you have to continuously grow. And like Bryce Young had to win, in my opinion, in different ways in year two as a starter compared to year one. And the fact that he was still able to be effective enough when teams had the kind of the playbook on him and they played him a certain way, it was like Okay, you put that spy, the Harold
Right.
Perkins, you get him up close to the line of scrimmage where Bryce really couldn't see him behind the offensive line. You let Bryce try to scramble to the left or the right, and then you're immediately putting that spy in his face. That was something that teams started to do a little bit more. Bryce had to learn to win differently. And the fact that he was able to do it, that told NFL teams, okay, regardless of what defenses do, this guy's always evolving. He's always getting better and figuring out ways, and it was a more of a complete game. It was a lot different. I think that's why Milroe might have not had as much success, or he could have struggled in year 3. But I think when you start talking about Ty Simpson, you start talking about Keelon Russell, Austin Mack, I think Alabama's positioning themselves to be in a really good spot as far as quarterback offensive system marriage that just kind of works.
Before we talk about the offensive line, I want to remind you guys, too, that we hang out on covercrimson.com. Message board's always cranking, and we appreciate Stacy for helping us out over there, and then all of you guys that are part of it. So, make sure that you check out that, and you can sign up right now, $25 off the annual subscription, covercrimson.com. All right, why Bama's offensive line has struggled, Clint? This is a question for you. I think, and I'll just throw that out there, look, if you throw the super chats at me, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing and talk about it. It wasn't a shot at my hair. Thank you. The moon was the one that took a shot at my hair. Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. I love all you guys, though. I love all you guys. Really, I've been in the locker room my entire life for different sports. I can take the heat, okay? But Brandon, I love the super chats and really appreciate all of you guys. I do have. I'm not rescinding my hairline.
You're rescinded.
Moon. Yeah, it's been like that since I was like a kid. It just has always. I got picked on a lot for it when I was a little guy. But anyway, back to the back to the matter at hand, Clint. The O-line. I think the reason that the O-line's struggling is you lost your best player to the NFL, and then some of the other guys that you expect to kind of be those guys to fill in aren't there either. And so this is kind of like an entirely new offensive line.
Well, yeah, and the reason that I wanted to bring this up, and this was, I guess I'll go ahead and pull it up now. So Dexter, right, this was several days ago, maybe a week ago, and I said, we're going to get to it on the show today. And then we didn't get to it on the show that day. And then I said, hey, man, we wasn't able to get to it. Promise we'll get to it tomorrow. I broke my promise, forgot about it. So, but I'm going to keep my promises, even if it's better late than never, I guess. But he said, his comment on Twitter was, man, if we could just get our O-line back, this doesn't get mentioned, but we have gone through so many OCs because of the system attacking Saban. Somewhere our offensive line fell off and hasn't recovered. Does anyone know what happened? Our line was so sophisticated. It was a good question, a great question that really had me thinking, and I was fired up to answer it. To me, when I look at Alabama's offensive line and the way that it's kind of struggled the last, really I would say since 2020, 2021 was just awful. But really since then, it's kind of gotten better. You got to think the offensive line, the quality of offensive line coaches, when you've got Jeff Stoutland, back in 2011, 2012, he's now the best offensive line coach in the NFL, and it is not close at all. For the Philadelphia Eagles, then you had Mario Cristobal, Miami's head coach, and then you had Brent Key, who's now Georgia Tech's head coach, and Kyle Flood. I think he was a really good offensive line coach that followed Steve Sarkisian to Texas. He's been there ever since. I think with Doug Marrone, I'll go ahead and tell you, I just don't feel like that was a fit. I know he's done some good things on the NFL level. I know he was with the Saints last year. Now he's with the Patriots. I'm not trying to take a shot at him as an offensive line coach. I am somewhat taking a shot at him as a college offensive line coach, though. When you're working with professionals and they're all there for a reason, the developmental side of it maybe is not as big of a deal. But for whatever reason, that just didn't work. I think Eric Wolford was better than people realize, but I think you got to realize there for a while, Alabama started to get on this trend where it's okay, we want to get smaller along the offensive line, smaller and more athletic. The game's changing. This whole doing the whole power run defense combination that had worked so well for Nick Saban. That was starting to kind of work its way out of college football, or that was kind of the belief of the thought. And then you saw, so they started recruiting a different style of offensive linemen, still high caliber players, obviously, that never changed, but just the kind of what they were looking for in offensive linemen changed. And then you had like Georgia have a lot of success. They won back-to-back national championships. You had Michigan, who was doing some really good things, making the college football playoff. And they were still using that kind of formula. Great defense, great run game, great offensive line, dominate with your offensive line, play your quarterback, Stetson Bennett off of that. Like that sort of formula is like, I think Nick Saban realized, okay, that can still work. So we started drifting back to that. And then you start getting the Caden Proctors being recruited. You started getting the Tyler Bookers, the Elijah Bridges, these bigger, styles of offensive linemen. So, and it's a lot more difficult than people realize. There, gap scheme offensive linemen, the kind of downhill power-based offensive linemen versus the kind of zone schemes and things like that. Different style of player, different requirements. Well, they get a couple of years into that, and then you shift back through the retirement of Nick Saban and the hiring of Kalen DeBoer. Now it's, well, we do want size where we can get it, but not at the expense of athleticism. So you started shifting back in that other direction. So it's been this constant wave. And the perfect example that I would, use this to compare is when Arkansas went from Brett Bielema back in 2017 to Chad Morris. That was a completely different style, a completely different offensive system. They were big, physical, and then you started getting more finesse with Chad Morris. So like in 2017, Arkansas's offensive line averaged 320 pounds, that was Bielema's last year. Then you fast forward to just 2 years later in 2019, which was Chad Morris's last year. In that 2-year period, the starting offensive line had gone from 320-pound average to 295-pound average. So it's like these things take time as you're recruiting different styles of player. Alabama just had like some waves there that was very weird. You had the 2020 COVID season where evaluation and, all that stuff was a lot more difficult. I think there was some swings and some misses there. I think it was a combination of factors. I think the offensive line coach, don't get me wrong, like that position has declined a little bit, but I actually believe in Coach Cap. I believe in Ryan Grubb and his history with the offensive line. And I think that they're going to get this, ship righted.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, that's a good sign. And I kind of feel the same way. Coach Cap can recruit too. And you can tell that he, not only has he been the offensive line recruiting hasn't taken a dip at all. When you talk about the 5 stars that they brought in, even the guys that might not necessarily be 5 stars, like Micah DuBose, I think is going to be a really good player. But also, looking at what they're already doing in the 26 class, and we'll see what the Juice Squad does. But I feel like the Juice Squad's, this is going to be their year, and it needs to be. Guys, say Roll Tide with a thumbs up as you hang out. And remember, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. 50% off the deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using the code Crimson at mybookie.ag. Mybookie.ag. March Madness, by the way, is coming. It's coming fast. The SEC tournament's here, and now March Madness. Think about it. Sunday we're going to have the bracket. Mybookie.ag, promo code Crimson. All right. This is one of the really the most exciting parts of today's show to me. Which freshmen are standing out? And I know the answer right off the bat. 2 guys to me. Okay. Can I just say them, or do you know throw them out there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Latsier Brooks. You keep hearing about this guy making plays, but kind of feels a little Ryan Williams-esque. And then Mustard, the Mustard man, Dijon Lee on defense. Like everybody's like, man, this guy, he's just got it, man. He's got the fit, the look. Kind of when Patrick Surtain came to Alabama, I remember people being like, man, this guy, there's something about this guy. And he may be one of the best at his position. I mean, we've ever had. Well, I'm telling you, in college, I mean, nobody wanted to throw on the guy. You didn't even know he was out there.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Mick. This is, first of all, as competitive of a wide receiver room as Alabama has had in a very long time. because we are hearing good things about Latsier Brooks. I think he has been, I wouldn't say a surprise because they knew what they had in him, regardless of what recruiting rankings said. But I think his ability for a lot of this stuff to translate, it's not all translating. Like, I still think there's some freshman obstacles for him that he's working through, like the step up in competition. That's very real. But, he has been a player who has pretty consistently made plays throughout just 1 week of spring practice, including one full padded practice. So there's only so much that you can take away from it, but he's flashed. It's a matter of you've got a bunch of other guys who you keep hearing good things about too. We know who the starting 3 are more than likely going to be. We know that, Rico Scott is a guy who's probably going to be involved in that rotation pretty heavily. We know Cole Adams has been a guy who the staff wanted to be a part of last year's rotation a little bit more. It has some potential. And we also know that Jalen Hill, his return from injury, he's looked good. He's done some impressive things, like just across the board. Jalen Mbakwe, like, where does he fit in? Because he's impressed as well. Like, I don't know that he made the best decision switching from corner to receiver, but that's not really reflective of, he just, that transition's not really working out. I think his path to playing time at corner was probably a little bit easier, especially when he was kind of locked in as that cornerback 3. That's why we make those comments. It's not that he can't transition to wide receiver and he can't be impactful there. He is doing some good things there. So like every time you ask about certain guys, like we've listed all these names. So you talk to people and you say, okay, how's this guy doing? I mean, man, the guy's doing pretty well. I mean, he's made some plays. He's done this. He's done that. Okay, awesome. Well, what about this guy? Oh, I mean, he's been doing well too. Like everybody that you talk to as far as this receiver room, they're excited about it. There's buzz. And I think when you start talking, like, this is where I think the combination that I'm most excited about is you're hearing all of this. And you feel like if like Jalen Milroe was returning as the starter, you would, to an extent, you would be excited about that because of his own playmaking ability, but you wouldn't be really excited about this is the guy that I really feel like is going to be able to take advantage of what I think is going to be a very impressive, very deep wide receiver room. I think whoever ends up being the starting quarterback in 2025 now, they are going to be able to take advantage of that. And that makes me super excited, Mick. So Latsier Brooks is one. Dijon Lee, you nailed it. That's been a guy who has been super impressive. Wouldn't be surprised if they started moving him around a little bit, trying to figure out ways that maybe they can get him on the field at some point in year 1. And then the other one that I've heard about, which is not a surprise at all, ever since, it started being some buzz that Alabama could flip him from Michigan, it was Ivan Taylor. This guy just felt like with the football IQ, the range, the scrappiness in which he plays with. The only thing I was really concerned about was he was listed at 175, 180 pounds. And could he come in and would he be able to hold up physically in year 1? Because mentally we thought he would get there pretty quick.
Right.
He showed up and he's listed at what, like 188 or something like that, 185. I don't remember. I think it's actually 188, if I'm not mistaken. It's close to 190. And he has been impressing people. He gets it mentally. He's picking up on the defense quick. I wouldn't be shocked at all, despite the fact that I love Alabama's top 3 safeties in Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb, and Zay Mincy. I wouldn't be surprised if Ivan Taylor ends up working his way into some sort of role in year 1.
That's very interesting. I love hearing all that. We got to talk a little bit of basketball because the NCAA tournament's coming, and we're still buzzing over that impressive victory that Alabama had, stunning Auburn, sending all the Bugs home. In overtime on Saturday. And guys, I got to tell you this again, 50% off deposit bonus up to $1,000 when you, and plus the $10 casino chip. You use our promo code Crimson at mybookie.ag. So as the tournament comes, that's something to check out. And also on the message board, we're constantly talking about everything: softball, baseball, football. You got all the charts on there, the depth charts. You listed the best players on the roster on covercrimson.com. 25% off the annual subscription at covercrimson.com.
I do want to add to that, Mick, because there's been some questions about it. We are available in podcast form. Apparently, we were already available in podcast form before, but we were very unorganized with it. The different shows was being sent to different places. Like, There was some stuff that hadn't been showing up since like mid-November. And so it looked like we had gone forever without posting a podcast. Now you and I have our hand on that directly. We've taken over or helped take over. And we're going to be involved as far as making sure that everything's periodically transferred over from video to podcast. But it's kind of under a new name, sort of. So it's Cover Crimson Podcast Network. So if you go to Apple Podcasts, you go to Spotify, wherever you listen, it's going to be available there. We would highly encourage you to follow and download all the episodes where they're all available for you. You can go in, check them whenever you want. But a lot of people, they have asked about the podcast side of things. They prefer to listen rather than watch. I'm more of a YouTube guy. If I want to listen to a podcast, if it's available on YouTube, I'll pull up the video version and just set my phone down if I'm in the car. That's just how I consume things. I got the YouTube Red or whatever. A lot of people don't like to do that, though. They like to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, do that whole thing. So it is available. Cover Crimson Podcast Network is what you need to search. But you're trying to get that up and going. And leave us a 5-star review if you like what you're hearing. We're trying to get some feedback on that. The bosses are trying to figure out, okay, how much effort needs to be put into that side of things. So if you're liking that side of it, if you're liking the YouTube side, certainly let us know too. Y'all's feedback is critical for us because it kind of it steers us in a direction of which way we need to go. Very much appreciate all the feedback that we always get. Certainly continue that. And we're going to get that side of things going up and going as much as we got the YouTube side of it going.
Yeah. There we go. More ways to hear us. I like that idea. All right, Clint, I guess the final thing to talk about today is Bama heading into the SEC tournament. How important is this tournament for Alabama and their seeding, do you think?
I think that it has a lot to do as far as, that 1-2 seed line. I don't really know the details on what they would need to secure a 1 seed versus, more than likely, I think they're probably going to end up being a 2, if I had to guess.
Right.
But I think that they really started getting some positive momentum with that Auburn game. It's all about peaking at the right time. They talk about that. Like Auburn right now, people can say, oh, they just didn't care about their last few games. Let them lose in this SEC tournament and let them try to say that it doesn't matter to them. I get it. If it's the end of the year, if it's a bowl game and you're not really motivated and you've already turned it off or whatever, that's one thing. Trying to turn it off mid-season and then turn it back on is like, okay, now the games start to matter again. That's difficult to do. And I've seen a lot of teams take that approach and they've ruined themselves. I've seen a lot of NFL teams who have decided to rest their starters when things don't matter and all that. We got our stuff locked up, and it's just something about that, just not treating it all the same really messes with the swagger of a team. So Alabama's at least right now is in a good place to secure the double bye. Just came off of a very emotional, very impressive victory against the number 1 team in the country in Auburn in their house. I would really like to see them on Friday continue that momentum and really be building things and starting to head in the right direction.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging. We'll be at covercrimson.com, so catch us there. Elephant in the Room, we're scheduled to have Coker on later today, so check all that out. Like, subscribe, thumbs up right here on the YouTube channel, and appreciate you, Brandon, for the super chats today, man. High five to you. All right, guys, talk to you later. Roll Tide.